I know there's something going on the 20th of March that I was considering going to go to, but I'm not going to go. I'm just not too sure if demos are the right way forward for anything like this. But yeah, so I'm of that opinion. I have been for a while now. Certainly not in that form, not in that manner. You know what I mean? We can demonstrate and express our views, but there's got to be other ways to go about it than to walk down streets.
Yeah, or if you're going to make it more worthwhile, like targeted at particular places, rather than it just being blindly marching somewhere where there's not really any sort of organisation, because that's what a lot of it is in London, isn't it? You just kind of get there and you're in sort of the deep end, aren't you, sort of thing?
Yeah, and the thing is, with what's happened in the last couple of weeks, very little has been advertised online anyway. A lot of it has been private conversations that have amounted to people meeting up and just simply mingling with the locals. No one's doing anything wrong because the locals are behaving like we are. People are gathering, whatever. It's not even, no one's noticed anything. It's like it's been life as normal almost. The last couple of weeks we went. I mean, I missed yesterday, but the 2 weeks beforehand, you wouldn't be thinking there was anything going down. Bizarre.
That's the only worry I've got with not doing stuff like demonstrating, because you almost it almost gives them sort of free rein to just roll out what they want, doesn't it? I don't think you get that argument, and it's the only thing that kind of puts me on the fence a little bit with kind of. I do agree with some of the people who sort of say we should be out on the streets and that, but at the same time, you've got to lay up the pros and the cons, and you've got to look at, like I've mentioned before, if some of us are going to get arrested, is it really going to be worthwhile if we're just marching through the gardens and it's kind of aimless, like it was? I'm not saying it was aimless walking through the gardens, but we united quite a few people in Bournemouth and Poole. But at the same time, if it's not, I don't know. I've mentioned sort of vaccine tents before, but I mean, I don't think that's probably a great idea. But just something like that, this bit more targeted, a bit more like they've got to be held to account, or they've got to answer a few questions. Or it's really a tough one with the demos.
It's about getting the message out, mate, isn't it? That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And what the best way to reach people, the best way to have an outreach, is it going down the streets, especially when the laws are getting more and more strict, or is it doing it there?
And then there's the other argument, obviously, where we have been relatively successful is when, obviously, and a little bit, obviously, what Gavin's probably thinking, where we have been successful is when we have been intercepted and stuff has gone viral. So I do get that argument as well, but at the same time, if that's happening every single week, it's not really make it worthwhile. Got later interference again.
Really bad risk.
Yeah.
Alright, it's gone now.
Yeah, that's better.
Sounded like someone stood next to a truck that was tipping out tons of glass.
Yeah. Because you're kind of like on the other side of the argument. What do you think, Gavin? Because I say I do. I'm literally. I would say if you're going to push me, I would say I'm 60-40 to not doing it. But I do get the other side of the argument, and it's.
I just feel with the protest, it gets a message out there for other people to see, isn't it? And it's interesting, as the protest went on, the amount of people, numbers grew, didn't it? And the awareness that's happening now for people, it'd be interesting to see just how many more people will jump on board. I mean, the nurses maybe that don't want the vaccines, the people that are against and opposed to these things, although they haven't been in the past, but now they're being forced to have a vaccination. Are they going to now jump on board with our message? We're trying to get out.
Well, it banned it to stifle the momentum, basically, because, like you say, we were gaining numbers every single week, and if I think they let it carry on, it would have only grew, wouldn't it? And I do think there is an element of that of why they stopped it, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's
well, we were definitely gaining momentum around just around the coach incident area. That's what like 3 weeks, kind of a peak, wasn't it? You know, we had the coverage of that, which was out of our hands anyway. That wasn't our fault in the first place, because we were guided by those who knew better. You know, but yeah, I don't know. There's an argument for and against. I agree with you. There is an argument for and against. You know, my heart obviously says get out in the streets because I feel I need to do something about it, whether it's productive or not. My head, though, is telling me, yeah, of course, do that, but are there maybe better ways of doing it? You know, I'm not writing it off as a pathetic way of going forward, not at all, because without the original demos, they wouldn't be, you know, reaching back so low down for such, you know, measures that they've been introducing. Because a lot of that is because of the demos. They know for a fact that there was momentum growing around about the end of last year.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, to get an exit down, it says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what happened on the 9th as well, the 9th of January, with obviously the girls getting arrested as well.
Yeah.
I think that's why they stepped up the propaganda down there, wasn't it? I think with the Dorset Echo and the Dorset Police.
Yeah.
Sorry, the former. But yeah.
But what it was,
yeah,
to fight us, wasn't it? It was to make an example of us, stop other people thinking of doing it.
I think the thing we could do, other than the walking the streets, and I don't like the idea of making them think that they silenced us really. You know, there's I think photos are a good one. You know, I'm sure we can think of some ideas. The hospital protest was a good one, I think, and those photos got around. We know the knife got around, coach got around, but you know, I think it's just saying we're still here. I'm sure we could talk about that, but like you guys, I'm a bit on the fence with it as well. And I was going to a lot of the London ones, and a similar thing happened. If the London ones hadn't been met by pretty forceful police action, there'll be well over 100,000 by now. But their one next week, you know, I don't think it will be huge because a lot of people are put off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think an aeroplane as well, doesn't it?
I'm hearing the most bizarre of sounds and noises in the background, honestly.
I've heard some bizarre ones, but not like this.
There's been some really strange ones in the last 5 minutes, honestly. If we hear this back, I wonder if they're still there. Yeah.
I mean, what I'm doing is I'm muting when I'm not speaking now. I don't know if that helps or if it still has the interference on there.
I think it's...
we all try that.
Yeah, me and Savannah talked about it before, haven't we? I think Savannah should have. Yeah, it is probably about. Yeah, maybe do that then when whoever's speaking, all of us, the others mute or something. Yeah, pretty good idea. Yeah.
So let us know. I suppose they'll let us know when one of us wants to speak.
Well, we'll soon find out when one of us starts, like now. So, how's the weather where you are, John? Are you going on the 20th?
What, myself?
I haven't decided, but a bit like you guys, probably not. I'm not going to go especially there. If I go to London for any other reason, then I might tag along, but, you know.
Yeah, I'm on the fence against Jamie. Part of me wants to sort of maybe document it, for similar reasons to why we've obviously been with the coach and obviously with the girls in the 9th, but part of me thinks I think they're going to be really ramping things up. Maybe even what's happened this weekend is a little training drill as such for them. I don't think the numbers I think it's going to be quite demoralising if you're going to be comparing what's happened this weekend to the weekend after to next week, because I don't think the numbers are going to be anywhere near that. I mean, the reason why those numbers are so big, I suspect, I haven't looked into it, but I'm pretty sure it's probably just similar to when the BLM guys come down to Bournemouth. It was all promoted in all the unis. And obviously, if you look at the age range of those protests, it would suggest that is probably the case again. So, and you're not going to get promotion from the unis next week. Obviously, the COVID protest or the anti-lockdown, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's been advertised as like worldwide, but yeah. I question whether he's just made up a load of these flyers just in an office in London. It's just bloody posted them all, and it's just hoping people sort of take notice of it. But
it seems a bit strange the way this was come about. I did post a video earlier this afternoon, and it was from the Freedom Alliance, and one of the doctors was talking there about it, and it's about a 6-minute video or something. It's on the stand-up group as well, but I don't know if it's going to be like one of those simultaneous things where, I mean, how would you know anyway? What that it's going to go down in various different cities or anything. I have no idea. And like Mike said, I don't think there's going to be much going down in London, to be honest.
I think a lot. I think about 50% of the people that even intend to go might even get there. I mean, for example, down at Bournemouth, they've taken all our car reg number plates. Where are they storing that data? What are they storing that data for?
But they've been accused of going in heavy-handed, and there was that. Obviously, I think a lot of people by now would have seen the photo of that woman being handled by the police, and a lot of people have realised by now that she's an actress, but nevertheless they were accused of being heavy-handed, so I don't know. I don't know if they were or if they weren't, haven't focused on it too much. One thing I wonder is next week, if there are other protests at the same time, maybe there will be women's protests. Apparently it's a day for anti-fascist action. Maybe it will split the police up, and their manpower will be, divided among different protests, which would be good news for us, because there's less of them to stop us, any of us that are protesting in London. Because I think that the women's protests, while there might well be genuine people and genuine feeling among all that, I believe, like Black Lives Matters, it's being used as a psyop, and it's actually a state-endorsed and globalism-endorsed protest. They were people talking about abolishing the police again and defunding the police, and I know the police, we're not fond of them. However, one has to ask, when it gets all over the media, to, rather like in the US, defund the police, abolish them, what is going on there? Defund the police isn't a very revolutionary thing to say. You'll be saying abolish them or imprison them. But, the agenda, I believe that comes from globalism and wanting to shut down conventional police and have some sort of authoritarian replacement.
Yeah, no, I agree. Did you see what they were shouting today in Trafalgar Square? Like, fuck the police and kill the bill and stuff like that. And it's almost taken another step up. I mean, I'm not particularly fond of that saying, what is it, choose your side. I think that's a bit antagonistic, but that's another fucking level. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, well, I suppose they are saying then abolish them, which is a bit more revolutionary than defund. Defund was, but... it just seems so state-endorsed. It's all over the papers and everything. Everything is. We know our protests.
Definitely. That's why it's on the news.
Yeah. So there's definite plan there. I think it's more divide and rule. That's what goes on. That's what globalism does.
The COVID, whatever it is now possibly chronic. A chronic disease. So, of course, when they start introducing that kind of language into the narrative, you can tell we're in for a long haul on this one. They're definitely needing that cover story for a while to come yet. So they're obviously getting up to something. A couple of us have said all along, anyway, this is not just. It's not really anything to do with the virus at all. Gavin, you were saying that, and totally right. It's not. It's a total cover story for something else. But how do you even get? I mean, if we can't even get the simple messages out to other people, if that's difficult, then how are we going to explain the actual bigger picture, which is far harder to explain in 1 minute or 2 minutes? There's a lot to it, isn't there?
Well, there is, because like I said before, to me, it's just a distraction, isn't it? This virus, it just distracts us all from the main event, which is happening as we're all arguing over masks, over vaccines, over social distance, over everything that's happening, the lockdowns and everything. Whilst we're arguing about that, the future is being mapped out, isn't it? With the entering the shops again, and the green traffic light system thing, the facial recognition that's going to be coming in, the vaccine passport. It's all being put in place while we're arguing about it.
Yeah, and they're not even really hiding it. I mean, you've got adverts all over the place talking about digital motorways opening on 2023 and stuff like that. 5G is very publicly being rolled out. There's adverts galore on the television supporting that. So it's all in plain sight what's going on. But the problem is the sinister aspect of it all. Most people aren't aware of it. But people know that things are happening. They're aware of something, you know what I mean? But they're just utterly misinformed, and that's a real issue. And that's why the press and the police, in cahoots, of course, have worked the way they have against us lot, for example, the way they did. They saw the momentum was building. They saw this was becoming a bit of an issue, and something had to be done about it. So it's no coincidence that all this has happened the way it's happened, including the lockdowns. And that's why I don't trust the 20th of March. I just don't trust it. And that's not me, fear-mongering or anything. I just think there's something wrong about it. I don't know. So I
look at it as getting out of this virtual world and letting people in their, hopefully in their thousands, join together and unite.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As a unit, showing that we are not afraid of a virus. We are not afraid to stand together without masks on. We will not socially distance anymore. This is us making a stand. We are not going to consent anymore to what you are imposing on us. We're taking our lives back. As a if there's thousands and thousands and thousands, it just gives that message, to everybody from behind the screen. You know what I mean? Because we've all been separated from each other for so long, haven't we? And it's bringing a whole, hopefully tens of thousands of people together, uniting as one. That's how I feel. I mean, we're not scared of a virus.
We're forced into they're trying to force us into doing it digitally, aren't they? Basically,
yeah.
I know what you mean.
Well, that's true. That's why when we talked about old school tactics a while back, you know what I mean, methods, whatever, of communication, that's what's meant by that. If you can get out amongst people and get the message out, that's the best way to always do it.
The thing I worry about, and the thing I've realised even more so, it's emphasised again the last couple of days, is just how powerful their media arms are, that they can literally just convince thousands and thousands of uni kids to go out and demonstrate on the streets for I mean, no disrespect to the policeman or the lady who died, but to someone they don't even know. They literally don't even know them, yet they might have family and friends in nursing homes that are possibly dying. And it's because they haven't been gaslighted or virtual signalled to care about that. It really has worried me a little bit. I'm not going to lie, because it's just they can just literally outdo or undo all of our work within a couple of days. We're very similar to what Dorset Police and the Bournemouth had done to us with what they accused us of and stuff.
But do you not think we hurt them more when we are standing up and being out on the street? What's their ideal situation? For us not to be protesting, or do they want us protesting? What makes us more of a thorn in their side?
Protesting, you're right, Gavin. Even to the extent of the manpower it ties up. I mean, I've been around town quite a lot, both weekends and weekdays, and I can tell you that I have not seen a single policeman in the centre of Bournemouth for days and days and days. I see the COVID marshals, they're there, Jake and Elwood, one of them with the shades, but police, just no presence at all. But when we protest, obviously they have tens of them come on duty and everything like that. But I don't have a very high opinion of them. I think I'm probably not the only one. But I expect police to behave honourably and with integrity. And what they did, both by arresting people for no reason, people do not have to give their name. There's been a court decision on that in the High Court, and then telling lies to the press about things being staged when they weren't, and their lies had consequences. So really, there might be some okay police among them, but collectively as a force, I think they've been despicable. And the only difference between Bournemouth and London ones is the London ones are equally despicable, but they'll crack you over the head. The Bournemouth ones are no better. They won't smash you up. You know, that's so far. So really, they need to shift what they're doing. And I mean, us being out there, Gavin, that's a good point. It does give them, we see what they do with them, and we make ourselves known. I don't like the idea of even calling something a protest, because protest is like, I'm protesting against the state, what people are doing. I don't recognise they have any authority over me. So I see it more as a sort of celebration of our freedom. We are asserting our rights to walk, to assemble, to do all those things. And yeah, it is a dilemma, because if we're not doing any of those things, then, as you say, Gavin, what would they prefer? They prefer probably to have an easy life and us not do those things. But maybe we just have to think strategically and do, you know, there's different things we could do. We could do a full-scale protest, but there's other opportunities as well. And in totalitarian regimes, people have to be creative, you know. They might have to do guerrilla actions or things visible rather than march with, you know, several hundred people, because that will quickly be substantial. Well, we can have a think about it anyway. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got to be more realistic, like similar to your thoughts, John. Like, we've got to maybe think of doing stuff with the numbers that, or the people that are realistically going to go out onto the streets, because I mean, we can. The reason I always ask the question is not because I'm particularly swaying over to one side or the other. It's more the fact I'm trying to get the opinion of who's actually going to come out on the street if we do something. So if you're going to only get 25, 30 people that come out, you've got to think realistically, what can you actually do with those people? And it's like, do we have to be more, like I say, more targeted? I don't know, maybe guerrilla tactics is maybe a bit strong, but yeah, I get what you, maybe be a bit more targeted, so it puts them in a position of having to react to it, and I don't know, blocking off someone's access to somewhere. I really don't know, but I do think it needs to be more targeted to something that will have some sort of impact, and not just blindly marching through the gardens where nothing really doesn't have that much of an effect, really. But yeah,
guerrilla tactics, as in a violent, you know, action or destructive action. I meant more something that is quick, something that has an effect, something that, yeah, as you say, things have made an impact when they've been videoed, when they've been photographed. So that's my sort of thing of kind of guerrilla tactic, meaning that really, not a smash the pressure just in case people are watching. I don't agree with that anyway. I mean, just to let people know, Lockstep, which people might have heard of, was the Rockefeller Institute 2010 pandemic kind of preparation. They envisaged there would be violence and protests and riots, and that there would be a strong crackdown. So to some extent, if the whole country went and rioted, it would be met with a strong crackdown, either police or military. And we're not really going to win that one. But I think so far the protests nationally, people haven't fallen into that trap, and I think it is a trap. We hold a high ground if we are non-violent. I expect at times we all feel a bit like, I'd like to fight back now or something like that. But there's ways of doing it without violence. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I don't condone any violence. I mean, I think every peaceful, as long as it remains peaceful, because like you say, John, what they do want is is to divide us, get us fighting amongst ourselves, and cause that tension, isn't it? That's what they're looking for. But if we remain peaceful, as we're in our numbers, there's very little that they can do without exposing themselves. If it gets filmed for the injustice that they're serving on us, isn't it?
That's what worries me a little bit about what's been happening the last couple of days with this obviously controlled one. Are they going down the route of maybe tarnish with being violent? Because I haven't looked at the latest on the live scenes in London, but it did look like it was going to possibly get violent tonight. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but I do worry that that's because we have generally been so peaceful. And I said when I went to, I don't know who went to Trafalgar Square on September the 26th, they literally battered us, trampled over people, and we still didn't react. And it's like, I do think there is an element of that. They're thinking, we've obviously had the Lockstep and the riots, because I do think they want it to get violent so they can then bring in the draconian rules, but they've obviously thought to themselves, well, they're not violent. We've tried to wind them up. They're still not reacting, and is that possibly why this other movement's coming now? And are they going to create the violence? Because the BLM didn't really have that sort of effect over here, did over in America, but it didn't really get that violent over here, did it? I don't think it quite had the effect that they were hoping.
No, I think they tried it though, Mike, didn't they? I think they tried to get the BLM movement more uprising and causing more conflict and tension. Everything's division at the moment, isn't there? Man against woman, and women afraid to go out after. Men are going to attack you after 6. It's pushing fear every part of the agenda, isn't it? We're all taught to fear everything and everybody now in life. Women, you can't go out, or men, you stay at home after 6 o'clock. Blacks against white. It's all about division, isn't it? That's all they're trying to do is divide us, get us fighting amongst ourselves, so we forget the real enemy.
But Gav?
That is so true, I believe.
Well, Gav, the more ridiculous the more ridiculous some of the measures are that they plan to introduce or they announce or whatever, the more surreal it all gets for me. When they start talking about having curfews for men only from 6 o'clock in the evening, then you're in the wrong realm at the wrong time, because that just is just so. Everything up to now has been bizarre and bonkers, but that just takes it to another level. That people will actually go along with that, and the problem is not people will, but the majority of people will. This is the issue we have here. That's why there's been no flip or anything. I've had moments where I thought, is public opinion sort of leaning a little bit differently, or are we gaining a bit of traction here? I thought we were for a little while, but since then, since the government in inverted commas, have sort of stepped back on one or two things that they were going to introduce to act like the nice guy. For example, kids don't have to now forcefully or that they don't have mandatory testing or vaccines at schools now, primary or secondary schools. That was announced officially. So now that is a show of goodwill, as it were. But of course, that was already planned in the first place. I'm waffling on a bit now, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. No, I agree. It's kind of like I think sometimes they put stuff out, don't they, and test to see what the opinion is. If they see the opinion's not in their favour, they think, oh, well, we'll wait again for another 6 months, won't we? And play it, like you say, as being a good man, or we're giving them something now.
Yeah, and coming up with such a stupid thing like those sorts of curfews or whatever, it just adds to the lunacy of it all. And it makes it more slapstick, you know.
Was that though a real suggestion? I know was it a Green Party politician or something suggested that, and then what happens is that gets reported, and then everyone passes it around, and it almost gets magnified.
Absolutely.
And I feel sometimes I get involved in the discussion. We're talking about it now, but sometimes I think it's just a trick, you know, and I don't want to go with their agenda. Even on this murdered woman, if that's what sounds crazy for me to say. I don't look at the main news, so I don't even know the truth.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's not about so much the details of whatever action it is they're bringing. You know what I mean? And I agree totally with you. It's just another example of them bringing another action out. Or a so-called whatever, you know, making a song and dance about it. And so clearly they're battling hard to keep the agenda rolling forward as they want to, because otherwise they would be coming up with this, that, you know, whether it's planned or not planned. But, you know, I mean, when I heard from my family in Germany, for example, that the contraction rates for COVID have gone up 30% in the last week. So that's and the narrative is now going in the way of Europe, and now is experiencing yet another wave of this, and it's going to hit us soon. So when you're already hearing that from over there, of course it's all part of the whole theatre piece. Then, you know, expect another year of lockdowns and stuff, which means it's going to make our job, whatever it is we want to be doing, even more difficult, because there'll come a time, I would imagine, when, you know, we will actually have curfews here. We've had them in other European countries. Why not in England as well? You know.
Yeah, I think it's possible. It's you. It's myself.
Yeah, I like you as well.
Yeah, just me.
Just you, I think, John.
Yeah, it's probably my internet. It's on a kind of extension of the internet, and I've not got the best bit of the house, really. The other thing I think will happen is as the weather gets warmer, people will just go out in crowds. So that doesn't mean they are wise to the agenda, but it's rather like the youngsters being very conformist. They'll meet in huge groups. They'll still be conformist under the surface. Yeah, losing it, isn't it? Did you get much of me, or did you lose me?
I've got a little bit of it, John. It wasn't as bad as before. Got most of it.
Yeah, so I think people are going to come out. The weather makes a massive difference. Now, as soon as that happens, they realise they can't enforce it because too many people are out. Even 2 weeks ago, when it was warm, the beach was loads and loads of groups of people, and they, you know, I think that's a positive thing. But I think it will ease through the year, and then next winter it will get strengthened up again. And also, we had a big event that happened up in Scotland. Glasgow Rangers won the Scottish League title for the first time in 10 years.
Did you see the crowds?
Yeah, right. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the streets. Nobody gave a toss. Now, clearly, so subliminally speaking, because when I looked at that report and I saw the photos, it wasn't just, oh my God, they're all out mingling. But for me, it was a clear indication that actually maybe I'm wrong. Maybe subliminally, people are a little bit aware of the fact that there isn't really a pandemic going down. There isn't really a COVID going around killing people, but they're kind of semi going along with it because they have to make ends meet. And if that's the case, then it gives me hope again. Because let's have it right. If you were a Glasgow Rangers fan, or John, you and I, let's just say Everton won the league title, which is never going to happen in our lifetime, but let's pretend it would do, right? then no matter how much of a fan you are, if you think there's a virus going down that kills you from 2 meters away, you ain't going out and hugging your mates in the street. You're staying at home, right? Doesn't matter how much of a fanatic you are, you're not going to risk your life on that. And so that's for me was the standout message of that. When I saw that, I thought to myself, well, wow, if this is obviously not about health. Even in people's behaviors, you see it's not about health. You know, I just thought it was very telling. I thought that for me was a massive, big sort of clear sign. There you go.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's funny because it reminded me of something I seen when I was watching some of the footage today of some of the students in London, and there was this girl like screaming at, I think he was screaming at the cameraman because it was subject access, and he's sort of like kind of on our narrative sort of thing with the anti-lockdown stuff, and they're shouting at him, "Why are you not wearing a mask? Why are you not wearing a mask?" And I'm thinking, you're in a crowd of about 300 or 400 people who obviously all crammed together, and you're shouting at someone for not wearing a mask, and it's just like, it kind of proves your point to an extent, is they're not really scared. People are not really scared of a virus, otherwise they wouldn't be out in the hundreds, would they?
Well, this is the thing, right? And here's an interesting thing. I heard this on the radio just by accident when I was visiting my landlady. I brought a cup of tea, and there was this radio program on Radio 4, and they were talking about, it was the University of, was it University? I can't remember which university it was. The one that Ferguson works for. Who were they again? Was it University College London?
Imperial College.
Imperial, right. Okay, thanks. And Imperial, they had people looking at some data. And what I found interesting was that Radio 4 came out with it. Now, bearing in mind they're BBC, you have to presume they're going along with it, and that's a tactic. However, it was still interesting. And they were talking about, I'm going to lose my. Oh, yes, they were talking about how on earth they could possibly differentiate between a supermarket being more dangerous than, let's say, a bus stop, or let's say a home, or let's say out on the street or whatever. In other words, how can you isolate hotspots, let's say, right? And Imperial College, of course, came out with this fictitious figure of 20% of people who have contracted COVID have contracted it in a supermarket environment, right? Now, of course, you notice in the narrative there, it's already, again, it's more squeeze, isn't it, towards the public and the population. But then there was a counter survey done and a report done whereby they said, no, you can't. It's impossible to identify how many people contracted anything in a supermarket, because in order to know that, you'd have to know where they were before they went to the supermarket, and nobody has that data. Notice that nobody has that data yet, right? Yet. Because that's the data they need for total control. So when people ask me, well, what is this all about? Well, that's exactly what it's about. That's exactly what this is all about. You know, it will come to the point where authorities will know your every step, literally. And this is the point. And so that, again, was interesting, little side thing that came out of that conversation. But, yeah. So they haven't got any proof of anything, of anybody contracting anything anywhere. They don't know any hotspots or localities. That's basically what I'm saying, which is also interesting.
Oh no, it's really interesting. It's kind of like gaslighting the public, aren't they? We need a surveillance system, aren't they? And it's trying to obviously plug in the track and trace and all that stuff. And yeah, it's a great point, though, mate. It is exactly where it's going. It's obviously what they need the 5G stuff for and stuff, and obviously we'll get probably be 6G next year, won't it? But yeah, it's where it's going, isn't it?
It's where it's going. It's where it's going, and there's nothing that we can say or do that's going to stop that ever from rolling out. This is the thing. So how much effort do we put into that, in inverted commas? That's where I'm a little bit cagey around it. Well, you know, I'm trying to pick my battles more carefully, basically, what I'm saying with it, because I think it has to have an end value to it, not monetarily speaking, but you know, it's got to be in some way, shape, or form productive. And if I feel I can get that going out on the street with a load of people at some stage, then I will do it again. Yeah. For the moment, I'm of a slightly different view, you know. So, but I'm human, so the chances are I'll probably change my mind before I go to bed.
It's just about putting your energy in the right place, isn't it? And I say I don't think going forward that protest is totally out of the question, but it's just trying to pick the battles, and I say pick the right areas and make it you can have a decent enough impact, and it's worth your while to say. Because I say it doesn't bother me about getting arrested and stuff like that, but that's not the case with a lot of people, because they've obviously got probably more to lose, maybe, or I don't know, their job, or they're scared. I mean, there's quite a few guys who I speak to when we meet up and stuff, and it's like I know they're scared to come with like nurses and stuff, and they're scared to say anything because then they're going to lose a job. And I've got an example of a friend who has stood up to some of the guys in the hospitals who was a nurse. I won't mention their name, and they're now basically on sick leave. So it's like
the trouble is there lies the problem a bit, Mike, because those nurses that are afraid to speak out. There comes a point when you've got to start taking responsibility of what's happening and find the time and think, right, it is the time to speak out. If I don't agree with something, I need to start speaking out. And the more that people start speaking out and doing things about it, if they don't agree with it, the greater chance we've got of changing things, isn't there? These nurses have got to start. I understand that they're protecting their jobs and everything else, but there's something greater at stake here now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Our future.
Yeah, I agree totally with you on that one, Gavin. Also, the fact that it's not just the fact that they need to speak out, but they surely should be aware of what's going on. So for me, it's a moral question here, not just a do the right thing to keep your job question. I personally think that if you're a nurse and you know the truth, but you're just following orders and you're spewing out the opposite narrative, which in other words means you deep down know it's a lie, because you must do, because you can't possibly see in what you're telling the people because it doesn't add up. I don't know. When this is working, it won't all be over ever. This is the problem, you see. I was going to say, when this is all over, certain people should be held accountable, but this is the thing. It's a constantly ongoing thing, isn't it? I don't think we're ever going to reach a day where we can say, right, where are those culprits? You know what I mean? That's a really unfortunate thing with this one. It's not like an event, a singular event, right? Let's go chase the bad guys or whatever. This is going to be a continuation. I was just before finishing that point, I was just going to say, and I came across a couple of videos only yesterday actually, and again, it was people being harassed and getting kicked out of supermarkets for not wearing a face mask and for not showing an exempt certificate or an exempt card. Still now, people think that that's okay to behave like that towards people who aren't wearing a mask. It's like, what is going on? I keep forgetting that's going down on a daily basis.
I had it tonight. I had it tonight, exactly what you're saying. Now, I don't know how these things find me. I went out for a walk just before this, clear my head. And I'm walking along round by the harbour, and I could smell fish and chips. I thought, yes, I'm going to have some fish and chips. So I went to the local fish and chip shop that's been in Weymouth, famous fish and chip shop. Lovely, always been in there as a child. They're all behind these glass perspex panels. I walk up to the counter. She looked at me in total shock. "Excuse me, sir, have you got a mask?" I said, "No, sorry." She said, "Then I can't serve you." And there's a bloke on the fryer. He said, "We can't serve you, mate, because you haven't got a mask on, unless you can tell me you're exempt." I said, "Well, that made me be able to have service then." He said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm exempt." She looked at me with this filthy look, and how do I find these situations? I just wanted to I was scared away from things, just clearing my head. Every shop I seem to go and I get this conflict. Now, it wasn't aggression or, antagonising them. I just walked in, wanted some fish and chips. Can't serve you. What is it? How long is this going to last?
That's the bizarre thing. It's so laughable that I sometimes, by the time I've realised it's actually a serious situation, the situation is done, because it's so comical in that moment. Because for me, I find it hard to take these people seriously, but yet I know I have to, because it is reality. It's something we have to deal with on a daily basis. So that's the unfortunate bit about it.
I didn't want that conflict, Sen. I just wanted to go in and get something.
Yeah, exactly.
And walk out.
Exactly.
I don't want to have all this conflict. I'm trying to get away from all this conflict.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Well, spare a thought for those volunteers at charity shops. I got an email through today. The PDSA are going to reopen on the 12th of April. They're going to reopen their charity shops, allegedly. But they have a list of stipulations if you want to go back in and work. And one of them is the wearing of face masks or face coverings. So I'm going to, this time I want to talk to the actual manager, not of the shop. She's old enough to be my daughter. That's no disrespect to her. But I don't think she's, how can I say it, doesn't have the authority to actually maybe brainstorm the idea and maybe change the ruling a little bit in the shop itself. Because this is the thing, shops go along with it blindly as well. Face coverings must be worn, this must be done, that must be done. It's like, well, actually, no, it doesn't must be done at all. It has like this avalanche effect, doesn't it? This snowball effect. They're doing it, so I've got to do it. I'm doing it, so that means he'll do it. And you know, it's like if you go into a place and a few people don't wear face masks, you'll find other people taking theirs off. We had that a couple of weeks ago down in Sandbanks, didn't we? Where that girl was walking towards us, Mike. And this girl walked past us, saw us all not wearing masks, took hers off, and in fact felt a little bit embarrassed she wore one in the first place. Right? It just shows you how that also works in a positive way. So just our presence alone had a little bit of an effect. Just by hanging out there, it was a nice day. People were drinking coffee, having a chat. The police were there as well. They didn't seem to mind. You know what I mean? So, and why did it work? It worked because there was no kerfuffle around it.
Yes,
you know?
I mean, one of the greatest barriers for people, one of the greatest influences in people's minds is the mask, though, isn't it? People seeing other people wearing masks perpetuates that fear into people, doesn't it? And keeps them constantly reminded there is a virus. So that's the reason the mask is a symbol, isn't it? Just for that. So if people stop believing that stupid bit of paper across their face, you know, and take the fucking thing off. But they just relentless. It's like a religion now, isn't it? It's a cult. It saddens me every time you go to the shop. Hey, world.
I think some people's aggression towards those of us who don't wear masks is probably based on that very notion that they wish they weren't wearing one themselves, and they just don't have the courage or the wherewithal to simply not do it. Because I think there are people out there who would rather not, deep down, to be honest, but do anyway, just because they don't want the bother.
Totally
I think there's a lot of people who doubts over the whole thing, but they'll conform in the supermarket and on the train or something, but it doesn't mean they accept it all. They're just trying to not rock the boat. And yeah, I would rather they didn't do that, but I still prefer them, because ultimately they're not really buying into the whole thing. They're just saying, well, I'll do it in the shop because I have to. I don't know, you might disagree with me, but I'd rather have that than the ones who, they're not the ones who would shout at us for not wearing a mask, you know, or feel threatened.
We may be able to win them over,
go along with it, but I do think that this COVID is ridiculous and gone on too long.
Thing is, guys, we're coming up to next week. Will be a year, won't it? Down the line, where we are, how far have we got? How much have we changed?
I do think that people, once they wake up to what's happening, do they go back? I don't think they do, although there's a few famous people that have taken the vax, like Peter Hitchens and that. But you know, he was only ever anti-lockdown. He always said Great Reset was a conspiracy theory, and he was never really on board. So I think our numbers. I do think our numbers have grown, even if it's not visibly so. I do think people suddenly see it. Some people that didn't 6 months ago, but it is likely to go on quite a long time. I see the roadmap as this being carried on long enough. I've got a. If people don't know what ID 2020 is, it's the program to provide everyone with digital ID, part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I've got something on it here I'm reading. It just says the program to leverage immunisation as an opportunity to establish digital ID was unveiled by ID 2020. This is in 2019. So they're already saying leverage vaccination to provide digital ID. Vaccination is in the majority of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is great reason. So the roadmap's going to be bring in digital ID, connect it with immune passports, connect it with social credit, connect it with a digital cashless currency, one currency, probably be with a UBI as well. And then you've got total control, maybe even put it on our body, so our body pays for things and does that. So my theory is they are going to carry on this on long enough to bring all that in, which will allow pretty much total authoritarian control. And
I saw something yesterday. I saw I'm here. Oh, that's better. Thanks, Mike. I saw something yesterday, and that was that they're now advertising quite clearly. They're looking for people who are interested in the universal basic income, and it's got a hotline number you can call up. So it's a bit like the old army stores of years ago, isn't it? Come on in, son, I'll get you a meal and a pint and then join the army. Sign on here, and it's a similar sort of thing. So, yeah, they're doing advertising now for all those who are interested in universal basic income, which is interesting. Again, it's out there for people to see.
Yeah, I think it's a really good.
I wonder if furlough is going to morph into UBI. Furlough keeps getting extended, and is it just being extended long enough to bring in UBI, and then it will go into that?
I agree. I was just going to literally say, a lot of people ask about what's the end goal and stuff, and I think that's a good explanation from John. So what the end goal could possibly be, will they let it go on long enough just to bring in those things with the microchips and stuff like that? Because it is where it's going 100%.
I don't think there's a set end game as such. I think it's going to be a perpetual roll on and squeeze on society, a maintaining of that farm, or our farms that are known as countries and all that sort of stuff. And but it's fun and games, isn't it? It's better than playing cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers, isn't it? This is the real deal, this.
It is the real deal. Are we winning, Sven?
You what?
Are we winning? Are we winning?
Well, listen. I'll answer that in this way, right? If I use myself as the measure, the indicator, right, how I'm feeling about it, me personally, then I would say I've gained more closure around a lot of stuff. I've gained more acceptance around stuff. That's not to say I've gained an agreement around stuff or I condone anything. It's not an endorsement on my side, but there's certain things I've had to learn to simply take on board now and accept for what they are, because I'm not going to change them. So I've grown in the last year in a different way that I thought I would do. And so, yes, in that sense, I am winning because I've gained more knowledge around it and I'm more aware now than I ever was. And this topic has helped me along that way. So I would say I'm winning. I would say a lot of people who are in the community are winning. But are we winning the populace in terms of outreach as others? I don't know.
Can we win over more people by the words that we share, or are they going to get won over by being personally affected by stuff, i.e. maybe losing their business or God forbid something happens to one of their family members? Because that's the way where the line of thinking I'm sort of going down, if I'm honest. you can sometimes get to the point where you can literally give them any information or give people any information they want. And if they don't want to go down that belief of the government could be against us, there's just no point in saying it to them. It's just absolutely wasted.
And I think there is a lot of that. That's the point. I think there's a lot of that. I don't think that has gone down much at all. I think I've got it close to home, somebody who I thought was on the other side sort of thing, even went the other way, so it's difficult. Yeah, Mike, and you're right. If you're going to be talking to somebody who's adamant and is not interested in our opinion whatsoever, then you've got no chance. And there's a lot of those around at the moment.
Perfect example today, Sven. I was out for a walk. There's an old lady stood on the sea wall, and I just walked past her, and she's taking in big gulps of air through a mask. I said to her, I'll tell you what, this air is so much nicer if you take that mask off. I said, and it'll do so much more benefit to you. She looked round to me like I was an alien, like I was some horror. Oh my God. And it was just a pleasant, and she turned around to me and said, but it's not safe if I take the mask off. It's not safe.
That's right.
I walked away and shrugged. Do you know what I mean? It's things like that everyday situations that I'm noticing. I was in the town the other day at the bus stop. There's no dots on the floor to tell people to socially distance, but there must have been 20 people in a bus queue, pre-programmed and subliminally just socially distanced all the way down the street. There's no dots on the floor, so they've been programmed into believing this now. And it was a normal, but you observe these things now, everyday situations, and people, it's quite bizarre, some of the things that people do now, naturally.
Well, it's a good, and they follow the leader, don't they? They follow whatever the person next to them's doing. And this is the thing, I did have this example yesterday. I went to a supermarket very close to where I live, only a minute or two's walk. And it was right at the end, just a couple of minutes before closing. And the guy behind the cashier, he was like, "Oh, could you stand back a little bit, sir? This lady hasn't paid yet." So I went, "Oh, okay." Well, I wasn't that close to her anyway, but okay, fine, fair enough. He had a mask on, she had a mask on. And then she was trying to pay me, and then I moved closer again, and then she asked me to move away again because I was too close or encroaching on her space. And so I didn't really say too much. I said, "Well, I'm not that close to you, and you're both wearing masks, so I don't see what the issue is." Anyway, she paid, went out. She was mumbling beneath her, and I paid up and went out, and then she put the shopping trolley back, and I had to say something to her, and I just said to her, "Excuse me, but I don't know who you think you are, talking to me like that in the supermarket. I kept my distance from you. You're wearing a mask, and you could at least talk to me in a normal fashion." See, because this is the problem, right? It's not so much that somebody's got another opinion or anything that snags me, but it's more sort of the fact that people are so shitty with it as well in their attitudes. A lot of the conversations, if I want to have them, they don't just fall on deaf ears, but you get quite an aggressive kind of response. And I've experienced that with other topics.
Well, that's because they're so buried deep into it in their conscious, isn't it? They have got so much faith in that piece of muzzle across their face that they actually believe what they're thinking. That's how deep it is, isn't it?
Most of them wanted the vaccine introduced as quickly as possible so they can get back to their normal stuff, holidays or whatever it is.
Yeah, and they've convinced people that is the way, isn't it? You get your vaccine and everything's going to be all right.
You think, isn't it? So these people are having this vaccine, although they know it, they can still catch it, although they know they can still spread it, but because they've had a vaccine, they will be given a passport to say they can safely travel abroad. So what is the vaccine actually stopping? Do you know what I mean? So they're going abroad, they can still spread it to someone, they can still catch it from someone. So, but they're given a vaccination passport to say that they're safe. So how are they any different to us if we didn't have a vaccine?
Yeah, you're saying because obviously they can still catch the virus, well, in their mainstream narrative, even after they've had the vaccine, because that's what they're saying, aren't they? Yeah.
Still catch it, or you can still spread it. So what's the point of the vaccine and having a vaccine passport? Because they'll still be going abroad spreading it. If they have it, the vaccine's not stopping them from spreading it. So why do people not take that on board when they think about these things? Why are they doing this?